Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Sunday's show. Should David Zaslav restore the Snyderverse? Will he? Who knows? That's the billion-dollar question. But let me tell you what Alex Zane, the Sky movie correspondent, had to say about Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. The director's cut of Batman vs. Superman is so good. A different movie. You see what happens when you actually let a director's vision come out? Something tells me if the original Ultimate Edition was released, the 3-hour edition, people would have had a different view about the movie. But as I commented on Alex's Twitter post, also, it was the marketing. WB had no faith in what Snyder was doing, so they tried to lie about what the film was, instead of being honest. So they tried to say it was a popcorn chomping battle between Superman and Batman. That's not what this film is. Even worse than the marketing and the lie that that's all the film was. They actually called it Batman vs. Superman. They could have actually called it The Dark Knight Returns. I mean, it's a loose adaptation on The Dark Knight Returns anyway. Why not call it that? You could call it The Dark Knight Returns, The Dawn of Justice. I mean, it's a bit of a mouthful, but still, you could have called it Dawn of Justice, because that's what the film's about as well. It's, you know, it's the first chapter of how the Justice League is formed. So, Alex Zane, a movie expert, someone who knows about movies, who interviews celebrities and directors, people like Tom Cruise. I saw an hour interview with Alex and Tom, and I could have watched 6 hours of that shit, baby. It was amazing. Alex is fantastic. He knows his movies. And you know what I find extremely interesting and utterly amusing here? It was the attitude of Batman vs. Superman from some people. They decided to talk shit about BVS and Snyder, but embrace the MCU. The MCU is like a plastic bag of fresh air. What happens if a bag's got fresh air and you open it? There's nothing in there. Because that's all the MCU is. That's all the MCU was. Now, back in the first 2 or 3 phases, it was a better version of an empty bag without its fresh air anymore, right? But it was still nothing. What Snyder was, basically Snyder had a bag full of so many goodies. And he had a plan. And he had a 5-movie arc. And we now know what that arc entailed. And it was disbanded by the mainstream audience without giving it a chance. The first movie was criticised, Man of Steel, for having too much action, even though they criticised Superman Returns for not having enough action. In fact, the studio hated the fact Superman Returns didn't have much action, just like the studio hate the fact that the Batman doesn't have much action. The Batman has the same problems as Superman Returns does in a lot of ways, and we'll see if we ever get to see the Batman 2. We've already discussed that for the past 2 days. Let's not be boring. So in terms of should David Zaslav restore the Snyderverse? Will he restore the Snyderverse? I love the Snyderverse. I think it's 3 amazing movies. And if those movies were made in any other decade, in any other era, they would have been embraced. You know, like so many great movies were embraced by out there directors. I want you to think about that for a minute. And I want you to think about that very, very deeply. Because, in a way, it's no different to Full Metal Jacket. Full Metal Jacket wasn't totally embraced at first. It's like David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers about these twins, right? One of them falls in love with this woman. In the end, they actually kill themselves. It's a very random movie, but a very interesting movie. And that's what Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio were attempting in terms of the DCEU, to tell a deep, fleshed out story. And this began with Man of Steel, which Chris Terrio wasn't involved with, the first movie. David Goyer wrote a very interesting story for Superman. And Zack Snyder directed it so well. They were trying to tell the story of what would happen if these superheroes were in the real world, and it was interesting to see. Basically, Snyder tells the story of Superman, and he makes him the ultimate immigrant, because that's who Superman has always been, by the way. The ultimate immigrant. He's different. And we know how society deals and treats something that's very, very different. And I want you to think about that for a minute as we're having this discussion. When young Clark, asks Jonathan Kent why, people have this attitude, about different things and why he must keep his powers a secret, Jonathan Kent replies, people hate what they don't understand. So they didn't understand the Snyderverse, so they tossed it off and embraced this bag full of fresh air. Because that's all the MCU is, by the way. And the Snyderverse had a full bag, and it was going to tell a beautiful story, but most of you disbanded it because it wasn't a popcorn chomping franchise with gags and jokes. The MCU is nothing compared to the Snyderverse, but people didn't want to embrace that. And it's interesting, as the years go on, Batman vs Superman is more and more appreciated. Why? Because once the Snyder Cut was released and the mainstream audience watched that and enjoyed that, they thought to themselves, I better check out this BVS that everybody hates. And they do, like Alex Zane, who obviously has just recently checked that out. And by the way, Sky TV don't even broadcast the Ultimate Edition, as far as I know. They only broadcast the original theatrical version, which I don't know why they don't show the proper version. That's something they're going to have to deal with. Maybe Alex can talk to his employers about that. That would be great. I think we're coming to a situation where Zaslav can see the benefits of embracing the Snyderverse. Because let me tell you something. We've had this discussion about Rebel Moon before. But once people see Rebel Moon, and I think it will have a limited theatrical release, very limited, then it will go on Netflix, I think Zack Snyder is going to blow up. Not that way, not literally blow up, heaven forbid. I mean, his career is going to blow up in a good way. People are going to see a film, a story that was pitched to Lucasfilm and rejected. Now, this is very interesting because I don't know who rejected it. Was it George? Was it Kennedy? Was it Disney? I don't know. But someone rejected this. Now, something that's inspired by Star Wars, that was originally a Star Wars story, is being made by Zack Snyder, who is a pioneer. And I believe, without saying anything or knowing much about it, apart from the synopsis, I think this is going to be amazing. And I think everyone's going to herald Zack Snyder as a genius. So David Zaslav has to act quickly if he wants to restore the Snyderverse, because once Zack blows up, he'll be able to do anything he wants. Now, luckily for us DC fans, the thing Zack wants to do the most is finish his DC story arc. And that's where we are. And I think the apology from Ezra Miller is very beneficial if you want to see the Snyderverse restored. Maybe they were part of Ezra's motivations, and I'm very cynical about what Ezra did, and I'm not quite sure if he was trying to disable the Hamadaverse. I don't know. It's a very, very interesting conversation, one we've had many times on this channel. So yes, David Zaslav should restore the Snyderverse. Whether he does or not, I don't know. But it's pretty clear the DCEU, temporarily at least, will remain in the Snyderverse. Whether he restores the Snyderverse is a different thing. He wants one defined universe. Does he believe the Snyderverse can bring the studio the money that it needs? Well, this is interesting because Zaslav has spoken about DC movies going theatrically, being great visually for the theatrical audience, and Snyder's movies have all of those things. So that's very interesting as well. We will have to wait and see. But for me, having someone like Alex Zane saying, and let's read it again, the director's cut of Batman vs Superman is so good, a different movie. And I'm sure he's going to get a lot of hate from the basic Twitter movie Twitter, right? I can imagine that. But it doesn't matter, because the worm is turning as well. As the MCU becomes more extremist and with so much extreme left propaganda, and the quality of the films and the television shows on D+ get worse and worse and worse, people are going to look over to the DCEU and think, yeah, Zack Snyder, that could be a thing. So I think the Snyderverse has got a great chance of being restored, but our voices have to be heard. We have to keep on going. And if our voices are heard, we've got a chance of restoring this thing. Can Zack Snyder's universe be the universe that they go forward with? Can Zack Snyder's vision be the vision they go forward? It's a very interesting situation. I think Snyder will be involved in some element. I don't know if that means the restoration of the Snyderverse, but I do feel there's a good argument there to say the Snyderverse should be restored and still can be restored. This has been Movies TV Man. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you on Monday's video. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.